that was emailed, because we put out a call requesting email questions ahead of time, and this one encapsulates many questions that we received ahead of time. So we're going to start with Mr. Cowan's. We're going to go all the way down, and then we'll continue to rotate, okay? Here's the question. Due to the state loan we received in 1992, the district makes $1.4 million in annual loan repayments to the state, has a large balloon repayment due, and operates with a state-appointed receiver monitoring our finances. Additionally, the state budget that was just passed will mean additional cuts in education funding. How do you decide which programs get priority, and what specific measures would you undertake to reduce expenses in the district? Mr. Counts.
The first thing to consider is that one of my criticisms of the budget process as a whole is that we really don't have a complete catalog of all the different things that the school district spends money on, broken out by program. And that's actually one of the recommendations that the Budget Advisory Committee that I served on was trying to make, is that the first step in order to address properly the question of what priority should be is to know exactly what's there, and then the next step is to actually is to have an open process where decisions aren't made right at a particular meeting. My experience with the school board is a lot of times there's some kind of solution that's presented that's a take it or leave it thing that doesn't allow a lot of room for any kind of alternatives. So one thing that I would insist on as a school board member is that there actually are alternatives presented, that you can actually see them, and then the process of people arguing about what the best priority is can be worked out.
Thank you.
Is it 1 minute or 2 minutes?
It's 1 minute
okay.
per question. Mr. Freeman.
Thanks. I think there's two issues to look at, and the first is how much money do we have and how much can we spend? And the way I look at that is that there is an amount of money that we have and have to spend, but I've worked in situations where there are limited amounts of money and when there are budgets that have to be balanced. I was part of a small team at NASA headquarters that had to balance a $160 million budget, and when we took cuts, we had to make hard decisions. So I'm not afraid to do that, but really what we did was we looked to partners throughout the agency, throughout the country, and looked at what value we had and worked on that. I think if you look at the Newark school system, which has been in the press lately, and that they have a $940 million budget to serve just a few more students than us, about 40,000 students, you realize money is not the only answer. There are a lot of things we can do, and part of the most important thing is partnering with cities and community organizations that have funds and have access to other streams of funding and working with them to improve our programs.
Thank you. Ms. Cronenberg.
So this question, I'm going to take this. This question deals with two things: priorities and how we would reduce expenses. So let me start with the reducing expenses. We can look at reducing expenses two ways. One is that we're going to stop doing something. Another one is that we're going to find another way, another pot of money to get that thing done. And that's what we've done with the partnering. One of the things that we've been able to do is establish partnerships with a variety of people, including volunteers. The volunteer programs that are out there allow us to bring other resources in, energy from other people. People that aren't with volunteers are not costing us money. So I think we need to look for the other possible resources. That's where we're going to find, so that we don't have to cut. And look at the impact of every cut that you're going to make. That's one of the things that we did do and was helpful to us during the budget cuts that we made. When we listed something, we said, what is the impact and what are the other possible sources of funding to keep that priority alive? I'll stop.
Thank you. Ms. Merriweather.
As far as prioritizing, I think the number one thing we have to look at is to cut away from the classrooms, from the teachers, and from our students. They take the hardest hits. And if we want to compete in this global society, we have to make sure we don't cut out materials, we don't cut teachers, we don't cut the things that our children really need, that support that they need in order to learn. So that would be a priority of not cutting. Also, we need to go out and find investors as far as corporations, and I believe in partnerships, reaching out, bringing that money into the district. There's a lot of money out there, but we have to go out and get it. We can't just sit back and say it's going to come to us. We have to go and get that money for our students.
Thank you. Ms. Miles?
I think one of the key things that was stated was priorities, and I basically think that's what we did when we sat down and looked at our budget. We looked at the categories that we had, we looked at the amount of money that we had. We basically said that we wanted to keep the priority within the classroom and to provide classroom support as far as maintaining those class sizes 20 to 1. So that's the key. Second, the partnerships. We went out and we went out to our community, not only to our cities, to our local agencies, we went out to other community people and asked for support for increasing volunteerism. So all of those things are things that we work in that need to be increased, as well as looking at how effective a program is. And the board has already said that looking at that, if that program is not effective, don't waste the money on it. Look at how we can prioritize that money and put it where it's most needed.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you very much. The priority has to be the classroom. And I'm going to give you a specific example of an expense that we need to look at. It's our police officer expense. We spend $6 million on that. That's not something typical of districts. And we need to look through the cities to have their agencies try to find a way to support us in that. That is a big expense that we have to bear time and time again. And when you cut $39 million out of your budget and didn't cut a dime out of that extra safety, we have to find a way and figure out what we can do to make sure our students behave and make sure that we can turn that around in terms of the environments at the schools. Finally, the thing that I'm going to mention is we have to also raise revenue here. Measure M is going to be a big part of what we do. And the reality is, if you look at neighboring competing districts, they have parcel tax funds that supplement their budgets that exceed ours almost by 3 to 1. The reality is, we have to understand, to be competitive, we have to spend more on our students, and we have to look what neighboring students are doing, school districts are doing. Thank you.